Okay. Hello, everyone. My name is Mohammed Shafieipour. I will be having my final PhD oral examination today. I would like to welcome the chair, my advisor, Dr. Akhmetovsky, internal examiners, Professor Lovetri and Professor Wang, and as well as Professor Stephen Gidney from University of Colorado, who is joining us via Skype. So the title of my PhD has been Efficient Error Controllable High-Order Electromagnetic Modeling of a Scattering on Electrically Large Targets with a Locally Corrected Nitron Method. So the motivation to this PhD program can be categorized into two parts. But before getting to that, this is the outline of the presentation. So first I will go through my motivation, and I will talk about the 4 contributions that I've been able to do during this PhD program, 2 of which are dedicated to improving the accuracy and efficiency of the LCN method at low orders. And in the second part, where I had the 3rd and 4th contribution, I derived a closed form expression for the optimal discretization and geometric representation with nerve surfaces. And at the end of the presentation, I will draw the conclusions and we'll talk about the future works. So the motivation to this PhD program came from surface integral equation-based formulation techniques, which are used in electromagnetic analysis. There are 2 different high-order techniques to discretize surface integral equations: high-order method of moment and high-order locally corrected Nystrom method. Well, both of them have advantages and disadvantages. For example, high-order method of moment suffers from prolonged matrix field times, and it is inefficient when accelerated by the MLFMA, especially at larger orders where large patches are required. High-order locally corrected Nystrom method, it is inefficient at lower orders compared to method of moment, and has not been shown to exhibit high-order behavior for arbitrary practical problems. So these started my PhD work. So the first contribution that I did is called on the equivalence of RWG method of moments and the locally corrected Nystrom method for solving the electric field integral equation. This work has been published in IEEE Transactions on Antennas and Propagation. If we look at a first-order LCN solution of EFIE, we can see that it is substantially less accurate when compared to its first-order Rao-Wilton-Gilson method of moment counterpart. So this is the solution of the first-order LCN, and this is coming from the RWG method of moment. So when we actually compare them with analytical solution of the ME series, we can see that the first-order LCN deviates severely from the analytical solution. On the other hand, RWG method of moment has better accuracy. Keep in mind that this is despite the fact that the matrix size of the RWG method of moment is 4 times smaller than the size of the first-order LCN. However, it was shown by Dr. Gidney, who happens to be my external examiner, and I'm very glad about that, that method of moment and LCN are equivalent if they have matrices of the same size. So what we did, we tried to extend that equivalence to the case of RWG method of moment and first-order LCN, despite them having matrices of different sizes. So this introduces current continuity enforcement on the first-order LCN. So imagine if you have a converter that can actually convert this into that. It is a smaller, more computationally effective, and more accurate. So in order to do that, while we are working with EFIE, the electric field integral equation, we have to show that these 2 discretization techniques can be written in a form that that we can show their relationship. So this is EFIE. If we discretize the EFI over triangular elements, we will come up with this. RWG method of moment is always formulated on triangular elements. LCN, on the other hand, can be formulated on various elements. So here, because RWG method of moment had triangles, we will do the same for the LCN. RWG method of moment expands the current over RWG basis functions. Here we are representing them in terms of half RWG functions or ramp functions. LCN expands the currents over A1 and A2, which are unitary covariant basis functions. After that, RWG method of moment does the Galerkin testing by inner product testing, and LCN does point sampling by enforcing the observation quadrature points on the observation element. So, so far so good. Now, if we look at RWG method of moment local interactions, which can be seen from this part, this is what we have. And in matrix form, it can be written like this, where G has this form in integral form, where we have the dyadic Green's function and the ramps. Now, LCN, on the other hand, uses basis functions in terms of 1, psi, and eta, because this is first order LCN. And the local correction system can be built as this, which can be represented with the matrix equation like that. And we have the Van der Moon matrix, which looks like this. Now, if we look at the elements of this kappa, we can see that a very similar form we have with this G tilde. So if we can find a relationship between this R and J, we can actually establish the equivalence between these two methods. So that's what we are trying to do. The three ramp functions can be represented by a cyclic rotation in terms of the element shape functions. So that's that. We can see that we have L and we have shape functions. Now, shape functions can be related to the basis functions of the LCN as this. Shape function 1 is equal to psi, shape function 2 is equal to eta, and this is shape function 3. So, on the other hand, we have L1, L2, and L3 represented using the basis functions as well. So if we use that, we can represent the ramp functions in terms of the basis functions that are used in the LCN method. So now we can actually write the matrix that is used for the RWG method of moment in terms of the matrix of the LCN with some converter, which can be proven that exists. So subsequently, one can prove that the exact basis conversion between LCN and RWG method of moment had this form. Basically, coefficients of the LCN can be converted to the coefficients of RWG method of moment using this converter, and the coefficients of RWG method of moment can be converted to the coefficients of the LCN using that other converter. So now, based on that, we can actually create RWG via LCN, the method that we are calling RWG via LCN local interactions through these transformations, where we have near interactions and the far interactions of the LCN converted through this phi times R from the right and from the left to come up with the local interactions in the RWG method of moment. So based on that, we can actually create the global matrices. We can see that the matrix of the locally corrected Nystrom method at first order, which is a 6p by 6p matrix, is converted to a 1.5p by 1.5p. So the size is reduced 4 times. LCN is converted to RWG method of moment, and current continuity is enforced. So this diagram will actually show the conversion that we are doing right now. The basis of the RWG method of moment are converted to the basis of the ramp functions using R. The coefficients of the ramps are converted to the coefficients of the ramp at the quadrature points. Using the alpha, those coefficients will be converted to the coefficients of the LCN method at the quadrature points, and in the reverse manner, electric field basis translation can be done. These transformations are all exact to machine precision, and if you numerically obtain this Z from this formula and get it also from the method of moment itself, you will see that the machine precision result can be seen. Those matrices are exactly the same. So this is the numerical results. Of course, we can come back to our sphere example and have that good mean series comparison that I showed you. So LCN could actually create that same sphere example. Also here is a more realistic geometry. So we can see that the LCN solution doesn't quite agree with the reference solution. On the other hand, the RWG via LCN solution has a better solution which we can see visually, and also over the frequency, we can see that as frequency decreases, that effect is more pronounced. So that is contribution number 1. Now we move on to the contribution number 2. It's called exact relationship between the locally corrected Nystrom scheme and RWG moment method for the mixed potential integral equation. So this work has been published in IEEE transactions and antennas and propagation. Now the motivation to this work is that to achieve the equivalence established in our previous contribution, we adopted the vector potential EFI. But due to numerical cancellation of line charge contributions, RWG method of moment discretization of the vector potential EFI, which we worked with in the previous contribution, is less accurate and more computationally complex than RWG method of moment discretization of the mixed potential EFI, which applies analytical cancellations. And this effect is more pronounced at lower frequencies. If you look at vector potential RWG method of moment, or equivalently vector potential RWG via LCM, because those are equivalent matrices, so that method cannot produce accurate results or even trustable results at this 1 megahertz. But mixed potential RWG method of moment, on the other hand, can produce very good results. And this is the effect we can see. This is first order LCN. This is the vector potential RWG method of moment, which we looked at, which can be obtained using RWG via LCN as well, which we are calling right now vector potential RWG via LCN, because it had that in its kernel. Now, if we have mixed potential RWG method of moment, this would be our curve, so it is very more accurate, especially in the lower frequencies. So, can we convert our LCN now to mixed potential RWG method of moment? Well, let's go about it. Mixed potential RWG method of moment, we again come back to our Galerkin tested EFIE. So the ramp-to-ramp interactions can be represented by this, where G is the dyadic Green's function, and it has the vector potential contribution and the scalar potential contribution. So it can be written in terms of this ramp-to-ramp interaction can be written in terms of these two contributions. This scalar potential contribution can be written in terms of 4 integrals, and because the dot product of the ramp with E is 0 in 2 edges, and the same contribution comes from the other triangle with the same magnitude, we can actually eliminate all the line integrals in this formula. So the only thing that is left for this scalar potential is this part. So move on. The pulse-to-pulse interaction, which we just had, can also be reduced into this form because divergence of a ramp is constant. Now, the reduced ramp-to-ramp interaction can be written in this form. This is the same as before, but this is reduced because of those analytical cancellations, which is important. Now, a recap from first order LCN. This is how we have first order LCN. The copper, remember from the previous contribution, this is 0th order LCN near interactions, which does have a scalar kernel. Now, what if we could convert this? What if we had a method that could convert this to that and this to that? Okay, so if we want to do that, well, we have to prepare this for such transition. For that, we need to discretize this outer integral using a 3-point quadrature rule for the vector potential part, and this one with a 1-point quadrature rule. So that's the requirement. If you don't do that, then you cannot, well, of course, as long as we are concerned, you cannot establish the equivalence. So this is the restrictions that we have to put on the method of moment when we are converting it into the RWG via LCN. All right, so I'm here. Now, let's look at this. In matrix form, the Z-near can be represented by this. And if I look at this part, the vector potential contribution via first order LCN discretization, I can see that this part, which is this, can actually be written in terms of the interactions of the LCN using the same converters that we did in our previous contribution. But the only difference is that we are now just working with not the dyadic kernel, but just the vector potential part of the dyadic kernel. So that is the vector potential contribution. The scalar potential contribution, well, of course, if you look at this and that, they are similar. So we can actually use the same L with a transpose to the left and to the right to actually create the same thing here. So what we can actually do, we can have mixed potential RWG via LCN near interactions in terms of the LCN near interactions, vector potential first order, and the zeroth order LCN. So based on these transformations, which are exact, we can actually create mixed potential RWG via LCN. We can see that the zeroth order LCN and the first order LCN are added together. Current continuity is enforced, and the mixed potential RWG method of moment matrix has been created. And this equivalence is accurate to machine precision, and it also allows to apply mixed potential RWG method of moment techniques to low frequency stable formulations, which only exist for mixed potential formulation rather than vector potential. So this is the global transformation. We can see that we are actually using different order LCNs to come up with a mixed potential RWG method of moment matrix. So here is a realistic 747 model. We can see that this is a reference solution. The mixed potential RWG via LCN does create accurate solutions, but these two methods, which are based on vector potential, EFIE cannot produce meaningful results. And the behavior is quite the same as the sphere. We can see that at lower frequencies, the effect is more pronounced. So contribution number 3 is on achieving higher the convergence to the correct answer with the locally corrected Nystrom method. This work has not been published yet, and it will be appeared in the dissertation. So currently, lower order methods dominate the industry. Okay, and the reason for that is that we are more experienced with them. The work of the last two contributions could be adopted by the industry's immediate needs. However, it has been shown that high order methods are exponentially more efficient than low order methods. Okay? So in this contribution, we study various aspects of the HOLCN. For example, limitation on the part size, predicting the optimal discretization for desired accuracy, and effect of dynamic range in the solution's accuracy. Nyquist criterion dictates that the maximum distance between any two adjacent sampling points should not exceed lambda over 2. LCN samples the excitation function at the quadrature points. So you can see that if you have an integral equation like that, LCN will sample it at the quadrature points. So in order for the excitation function at the quadrature points, which is this, to be able to exactly represent the excitation function of this, we should have this inequality, which is the consequence of the Nyquist criterion. Okay? So if you have that, well, Hmax is the electrical size of the largest element. This is the size of the element. And delta QP is the maximum distance between two adjacent quadrature points, which are this. So because of the Nyquist criterion, this is necessary for higher order convergence. So we cannot violate that thing. Now, 1 over delta Q does not grow linearly with P because Gaussian quadrature points are not uniformly distributed. Nevertheless, at order 8, patches as large as 3 lambda are allowed. This is in spite of previous work empirically suggesting 1.5 lambda. So we can actually go beyond that. Now, if you look at this, these dotted lines, which are all here, these are violating this criteria, and these solid lines are respecting that. And you can see that as soon as you start respecting that criteria, you can actually have the higher the convergence, which is great. So for example, here at order 8, you can see that this patch size is 2.45 lambda, and you can actually get the higher the convergence. But if you come here, that guy is 3.85, so you are over that 3 lambda, and no accuracy can be seen. Now, theory suggests that the convergence rate should exhibit h to the power 2p plus 1. That's the theory. But typically, the convergence rate is assumed to be in the order of h to the power p, which is very smaller than this guy. But in practice, the convergence rate depends on many factors, and you have to generally write it like that. You cannot follow either this one or that one. You have to make it in a more general sense. Okay? So, in an HO method, the number of unknowns scales as p squared divided by h squared. Okay? And in this convergence rate, which was generalized, it is possible to experimentally find A and B. Okay? So if we experimentally find A and B, what's going to happen is that in this H, we can bring all the components to the other side, and H will remain. So we can actually write N in terms of these: P, B, P, epsilon, and A. So what's going to happen right now is that you can actually compute the number of unknowns for a given order and a desired accuracy, considering that A and B are experimentally found. So it is possible to predict the optimal discretization for a desired accuracy. So let's look at this guy, for example. If I need 2 digits of precision, this is my curve. Okay, these are the number of unknowns that are going to come out of this. So the optimal discretization for this accuracy is order 5, which is about 20,000 unknowns. But if I don't have a method which implements order 5, I have to go to lower the methods that we know, and at that point I have to use 1 million unknowns to get the same accuracy. Okay, so that's that. Now let's increase the accuracy. This is the curve. This is the optimal one at order 10, about 100,000 unknowns. But the problem is this: 10 billion unknowns you need with the lower techniques, which is very hard to compute. Okay. So an LO algorithm requires exponentially more unknowns. So because this has an exponential form, we are realizing that if you need 2 digits of precision, 1 million unknown may not necessarily be a very bad thing. People can actually do that. They can go up to a few billions nowadays. Okay, so is it really worth it to try to get to this type of precisions, where engineering solutions in a lot of applications, 2 digits of precision is actually sufficient? Okay, so that depends on what type of problem you are solving. Okay, effect of solutions dynamic range, that's a very important concept. Analytical mean series is available for this sphere. So this is a 33 lambda sphere, is not that large, and the dynamic range in the solution is about 7,000. Okay. Now let me try to get the solution which is available by mean series with the RWG method of moment. This is RWG method of moment. Okay. I'm getting 9 triangles per lambda, so I can see that in the lit area I have 0.3%, which is very good. But as the magnitude is dropping, I am seeing that the error is growing, and at this point I have 30% error. Okay, so in here I need, because of the very low magnitudes here, I need a better discretization. Well, RWG method of moment, what can we do? We can increase the number of triangles. So at this point, I'm having 11 triangles, 3.63 million RWG unknowns, and still 20% error in here. From 30 to 20, this is not good. Okay, so if you are trying to place some antenna here, you work with this, and you cannot really get the solution that you want. Okay, so what can we do? Well, higher the LCN provides up to 6 digits of precision in the shaded area with less than 500,000 unknowns. So this is the solution, order 15, 6 digits of precision, which is great to just look at. Okay, so this is the formula that we had, and we can see that if we wanted to get the same accuracy of solution in the shade area, we had to go to several million, and several billion, several trillion. Okay, but higher the method can actually do that with less than 500,000 unknowns. Okay, so this concludes my contribution number 3. Now contribution number 4. On new triangle quadrature rules for the locally corrected Nystrom method formulated on nerve-generated Bezier surfaces in 3D. This has been submitted with revisions to IEEE transactions, and because of the revisions, the title of this guy has been changed. Okay. So motivation toward this work, it's been shown that using non-uniform rational B-spline surfaces in CM can lead to substantial increase in efficiency. That is applicable to high-frequency methods as well as boundary element methods. So benefits include no introduction of artificial edges, which prevents BEM, from introducing infinite field singularities, reduction in the number of unknowns due to larger patches irrespective of the curvature, desirable properties in terms of geometry design, storage efficiency, and etc. So if we combine the LCN method with NURBS, higher order convergence is achieved. There was a publication about that. Higher order convergence was not shown, but we went ahead, implement that method, and we actually got the higher order convergence. So this is a torus. We can see that if we take this order 6 as a solution, we can actually have, with the CFI solution, higher order convergence both for maximum error and mean error. But what's the problem with this? Well, in the previous implementation of LCN model with NURBS, only quadrilateral elements were considered. Okay, but if you look at more general type of geometries, even for this simple sphere, you have triangular elements, and also on this B2. So a typical Bezier mesh, these are Bezier meshes, obtained from named surfaces include both triangles and quadrilateral. So a quadrilateral Bezier element as well as a triangular one. So now, well, let's say we just formulate LCN on triangles. But the problem is that formulating LCN on triangles has limitations. Number of quadrature points for an arbitrary Gaussian rule is not the same, is not always the same as the number of functions in the complete set of polynomial basis. Also, Gaussian quadrature rules produce matrices with high condition numbers due to high density of points near the edges and vertices. Okay? So what we'll do in this contribution, we develop new quadrature rules for Bezier triangles based on equidistant Newton Cotes quadrature rules. Now let's look at the 1D Newton Cotes rules. Newton Cotes quadrature formula allows to divide the domain with different types. So for example, if you have a 3-point 1D rule, we can have, for example, a closed type. Well, this is not good for LCN because you are having 2 quadrature points right at the boundary. This is element 1, element 2. This is not allowed. If you use open type, well, you can actually use this in LCN, but the problem is that you are bundling your points to the center of your element. So this distance is twice this distance. Okay. So what we'll do, a new type of 1D quadrature rules, quadrature abscissas, can be derived from the generalized case. So this is what we'll do. Basically, in this fashion, you have the same distance from this to that and from this to there. So these are uniformly distributed in the 1D domain. So a 2D quadrature rule for triangles built from this type is suitable for LCN. Now we construct 2D quadrature rules of this form, where Q is a triangle number, this is a triangle number, and these are basically P equal to 2, 3, 8, and 9. We can see that the distribution is in a more uniform fashion. So the weights are computed using this system of linear algebraic equations, where the Van der Waals matrix is obtained using F, where F is a full set of K polynomial functions complete to order P, where K is actually also a triangle number. So if we use P equal to N, it makes this K equal to this Q. So the Van der Waals matrix becomes a square, and the computed weights will provide integration results with order P equal to N. Now let's analyze the Van der Waals matrix that is created using already existing Gaussian quadrature rules and the ones that we just proposed. So Van der Waals matrices based on existing Gaussian quadrature rules, they are not always a square unless oversampling is introduced. So we can see that the value of K and Q may be different. In the Willman and Bailey method, they introduce extra unknowns to actually make the matrix square. They are accurate to machine precision for arbitrary order. Well, Gaussian quadrature rules are known for that. But they have a sudden increase in the condition number as the order increases. So for example, Lenese and Jefferson quadrature rules at order 5, you can suddenly see that the condition number goes very high. Same for Dunavant at order 7, and because these guys are derived from this Dunavant, you will still have that problem at order 7. But now let's look at these Van der Waals matrices. They are always a square because we made P equal to N. Those guys are accurate to machine precision up to order 9. And that is typical for Newton Cotes rules. If you look at these errors here, this is the error if you use the same order polynomial to represent your function. So at order 0, you have error 0 to machine precision. So the machine precision here is 10 to the minus 12. You can see that you are still machine precision. At this point, you hit the machine precision result. So order 9 is very stub, and this actually agrees with the 1D Newton Cotes rules in the literature. Now, in terms of kappa, which is our condition number, you can see that the condition number typically grows. It's not like we have a sudden increase. So the proposed rule can be applied to Bezier triangles for orders from 0 to 9 inclusively. This is our sphere with EFIE. We can see that higher the convergence has been achieved. After order 9, the error starts to grow, which we know why. This is MFIE, the same thing here. And this is a spiral antenna. These guys are smooth objects, so we can actually get higher the convergence on them. If you use CFIE, we can see that the arbitrary machine precision results can be achieved if we pump more unknowns into this higher technique. Now, if we use a non-smooth objects, like this B2 aircraft model, and we use CFIE, we can see that this is our RWG method of moment solution, which is obtained from a commercial tool. This is our proposed method. They look very similar. Well, at the edges, there are some discrepancies, and that can be attributed because of the sharp edges. But the important thing here to note is that this proposed solution uses 30 times fewer unknowns compared to this reference solution. And if we actually look at this line, which goes over both triangular and quadrilateral elements, we can see that 2 to 3 digits of precision is achieved throughout. And the number of points is dictated by the number of quadrature points that reside on this line, which is also this line. So accuracy of solution is 2 to digits of precision over both elements. Now, conclusions and future work. Well, first of all, the LCM method was made equivalent to the RWG method of moment for the case of the vector potential EFIE. And in the second contribution, for the mixed potential EFIE, the benefit of using higher the LCM method was quantified by relating the number of unknowns to the order of the discretization, and the desired accuracy. A new family of quadrature rules for Bezier triangles were introduced and applied to LCN. Future work, well, some can extend the work of mixed potential RWG via LCN to higher order LCN in order to increase LCN's efficiency, because LCN uses vector potential EFIE in general. So if someone can actually generalize this to high orders, then they can actually increase the efficiency because they are eliminating a lot of line integrals. Achieving higher the convergence to the correct answers for geometries with edges, like the B2, by perhaps performing edge refinement near the geometry edges applied to LCN model with NURBS. Because if you have your geometry using NURBS, edge refinement is quite easy. Now, these are the conference abstracts, conference proceedings, and the international journals. This one is under review, and hopefully we can get the acceptance. Well, at the end, I would like to thanks again Vladimir Okhmatovsky, who introduced me to this field. And right now, I'm just feeling that my work has just begun. It's not the end of it. Committee members, Dr. Joe Lovetri and Dr. Bicheng Wang, the external examiner, Professor Gidney, University of Manitoba, and the department, Compute Canada, for those great resources. We actually got extra resources last year, and the work of the third contribution was made because of that extra resources. University colleagues, Dr. Aronson, Dr. Jeffrey, and others, my family and friends. And the last slide, I tend to put this type of for loop as a question and answer, and the reason for that is that you didn't see a single line of code in these slides, but everything that I showed you went through a C code or C++ code implementation. So they deserve to be here. Thanks very much for your attention.